What if the one you're destined to love is the one you're fated to destroy? In a kingdom built on fear and silence, magic is a death sentence, and love is an act of rebellion. He was a weapon sharpened by the crown, a man who hunted the powerless in the name of order. She was the hidden spark of a dying lineage, healing what the empire chose to break. But when rebellion rises from the ashes, their worlds collide, and the line between hunter and hunted begins to blur. In the ruins of faith and fire, they will face the one truth that cannot be buried. Some souls are bound, even beyond destiny. If you're ready to feel every heartbeat, every betrayal, every impossible kiss, hit subscribe, and let the story begin. The night burned red over the village of Terith. Ash fell like snow, coating the broken roofs and the bodies below. Lyra knelt beside a child, pressing trembling hands over his wound as her power flickered to life, a faint golden glow that defied the darkness. Every heartbeat screamed a warning. If they see you, you die. The smell of smoke mixed with blood. The air itself felt heavy with grief. "Stay with me," she whispered, though she knew he wouldn't. Not again. Not tonight. From the hill above, Cale watched the chaos through the slits of his steel visor. To him, fire was duty, cleansing, not cruel. But something about this burning felt wrong. His men roared and slaughtered, their blades catching light like shards of the sun. Then he saw her, a girl of light in a sea of death, her palms glowing over a dying boy. The order was clear: kill all marked by magic, yet his sword refused to move. For the first time in years, mercy felt heavier than steel. "Hunter, she's a witch," one soldier shouted. Cale's voice cut like thunder. "Stand down. You saw her power. I said stand down." Lyra's eyes met his for a heartbeat, gold to gray, and she vanished into the smoke. Cale's pulse thundered in his ears. He had just committed treason. As the fires roared behind him, he whispered into the wind, "What have I done?" But the only answer was silence, and the faint scent of ash and lilies. The capital of Valinor gleamed like a wound beneath a gray morning sky. Cale stood before the obsidian throne, every motion measured, every word rehearsed. "The purge is complete," he said, bowing low, but the lie burned in his throat. The king's eyes, ancient, unreadable, narrowed with quiet menace. "And yet," he murmured, "my hunters whisper that one of them escaped, the girl of white flame. You will find her, Cale, or I'll find you." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Miles away, Lyra knelt beside a river, scrubbing soot and blood from her hands. The water turned pink, then clear, as if trying to forget. The reflection that stared back wasn't hers anymore. The wild light behind her eyes was growing stronger. "You should have run farther," she muttered. The river whispered back, its surface rippling with her voice. "You can't outrun destiny." The whisper chilled her more than the cold. That night, Cale dreamed of fire and guilt, his sister's face flashing through the flames. Her voice reached him through the smoke. "You're hunting the wrong side, brother." He woke with his hand on his blade, drenched in sweat, haunted by a ghost he could never bury. The king's order echoed again. "Find her. Burn her. End the bloodline." Kyle stared at the blade resting beside him, its edge still blackened from old sins. For the first time, he wondered if he was the monster everyone feared. At dawn, the forest stretched before him, endless, mist-wrapped, humming with unseen eyes. Every rustle of leaves sounded like her name. "Lyra," Cale muttered under his breath, though he didn't know why. He followed footprints along the riverbank until the ruins rose before him, an ancient temple swallowed by ivy and shadow. Inside, faint light pulsed through the cracks in the stone like veins under skin. He felt it before he saw her. Lyra moved between the fallen pillars, her touch glowing gold as she healed a rebel boy's shattered leg. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "The hunters are close." "Then why are you still here?" the boy asked. She smiled softly, though her eyes betrayed exhaustion. "Because someone has to be." The moment Cale entered, her magic dimmed. She turned, the faint glow on her skin fading like dying embers. "You came to finish what you started?" she asked, her voice low but unafraid. He lowered his sword, each heartbeat echoing like thunder between them. "No," he said finally. "I came to make sure you survive this time." For a heartbeat, Time froze. Then the forest exhaled, and everything began to change. Rain fell hard and heavy as they ran. Behind them, fire consumed the temple, the crackle of burning wood chasing them into the dark. Lyra stumbled, breathless, and Cale caught her arm before she fell. "Why help me now?" she demanded, her voice raw with mistrust. He didn't look at her. "Because I once killed someone like you. Someone who didn't deserve it." They stopped in a clearing surrounded by silver trees that shimmered under the rain. Lyra's heartbeat slowed as she studied him, the man who had once been her enemy, now trembling like the storm around them. "Was it someone you loved?" she asked softly. He said nothing, only unclasped his gauntlet and opened his palm. There, glinting in the rain, was a pendant, a crystal tear on a silver chain. "It was hers," he said. "My sister's." The world went still. Lyra's voice broke into a whisper. "That pendant, it belonged to the woman who taught me to heal." The words fell between them like lightning. Kyle froze, the realization striking through his chest. The sister he'd loved, the sister he'd killed for loyalty, had lived a secret life as one of the very people he was trained to destroy. The thunder cracked above, echoing the scream neither of them could make. By the campfire's dying light, their shadows danced across the trees. Cale's armor lay in the dirt, tarnished and dented, a relic of a man who no longer believed. Lyra sat across from him, tracing sigils into the ground with glowing fingertips. The air between them buzzed with tension and smoke. "You hate what I am," she said quietly. "You hate that I make you question everything you've sworn to protect." Cale stared into the flame, his voice rough. "No, I hate what they made me believe." He looked up at her, eyes gray like storm clouds. "Maybe the only monsters are the ones who follow orders without asking why." Lyra's heart clenched. She reached out, drawing a circle of light around them. "Then let's make our own order," she whispered. "Just until sunrise." When their palms met, the air snapped like thunder. Fire and shadow swirled together, the ground trembling beneath them. Pain seared their veins as a mark, an ancient sigil, burned into their wrists. Cale gasped, clutching his hand. "What did you do?" Lyra's eyes widened, both afraid and awed. "I think we just made a pact older than the crown itself." The flame flickered higher, casting their joined silhouettes against the night. Two souls bound by accident, by fate, and by something neither of them could yet name. Morning bled through the canopy in ribbons of gold and smoke. Kyle and Lyra reached the hidden stronghold, a labyrinth of caves carved beneath the mountain's bones. Inside, the rebels sharpened blades and whispered prayers to gods long forgotten. The air smelled of iron and hope, the kind that hurts. Lyra guided Kyle through the torchlight, her fingers brushing against cold stone as if the walls themselves were listening. "These people will never trust me," Kyle murmured. "Then earn them," she said, "like you're trying to earn yourself." An old mage named Taryn emerged from the shadows, his eyes pale as moonwater. He studied them both, recognition flickering behind disbelief. "The hunter and the healer," he rasped. "The circle turns again." Lyra frowned, but he only smiled sadly. The prophecy warned that when light and shadow share one breath, the kingdom will burn to be reborn. Cale felt the mark on his wrist throb, heat pulsing beneath the skin. Outside, thunder rolled. The world itself seemed to agree. That night, whispers spread through the camp. "The hunter walks among us." Cale heard them, but Lyra's voice cut through the noise. "You're not the same man they fear," she told him. "You're the proof that fear can change." He almost smiled, then turned away, because believing her would mean forgiving himself. Far above the mountains, the king of Valinor sat before a mirror made of living glass. Shadows coiled at his feet like serpents. "So," he whispered to the reflection that was not his own, "the boy disobeys." A second voice, darker, ancient, laughed from within the mirror. "Then let him. The bond will bring them both to me." Flames flickered, and the reflection's eyes blazed gold. The king smiled, a crack running down his face like porcelain splitting. "Let the god of fire wake." Lyra woke screaming, the image of a burning throne seared into her mind. Kyle caught her shoulders, holding her as she shook. "It wasn't a dream," she gasped. "He's waking something older than any crown." Kyle swallowed hard, thinking of the strange warmth beneath his skin, the way his blood hummed when she was near. "If he's calling a god," he said quietly, "then we're already too late." Taryn appeared at dawn, carrying a scroll wrapped in blood-red silk. "The king feeds his power through fragments of captured souls. Sombreth souls," he said. "Your sister's was the first." Kael's knees nearly gave way. The truth was heavier than his armor had ever been. Lyra reached for him, her touch a trembling promise. "Then we stop him." For her. And for the first time, Kael didn't argue. The rebels marched at dusk, their torches painting fire lines across the valley. Among them, a man walked with a silver cloak and 2 calm eyes. Corin, the strategist. He spoke softly of hope, of victory, of freedom. His words slid through the camp like honeyed poison. Kael distrusted him instantly. "He's too certain," he told Lyra. She hesitated. "He saved more lives than you've taken." Yet, when Corin's gaze lingered on her too long, Kael's pulse darkened with something unnameable. That night, Corin approached Lyra alone. "You think he can love you?" he asked gently. "He's the reason your people burned." She turned away, but his voice followed like a dagger. "If you survive him, you'll never forgive yourself." Before she could answer, the alarm horn blared, soldiers descending the ridge. Corin vanished into the chaos, smiling as flames rose. Kael fought through the smoke to reach her, shouting her name. When they finally met amid the fire, Lyra's hands were bloodied, her expression torn between fury and disbelief. "He sold us out," she said. Kael looked around the burning camp. The bodies, the broken banners. "No," he whispered. "He sold you out." The realization was bitter as ash. The king had found them, and their bond was the beacon. They fled to the capital through tunnels carved beneath the city's foundations. Every step echoed with ghosts. Kael's past, Lyra's fear, the whispers of 1,000 condemned. Above them, bells tolled for the Empire's victory. The king had declared the rebellion dead. In the throne room, however, he stood alone, frail yet blazing, feeding on stolen souls suspended in crystal around his seat. The air reeked of incense and decay. When Kael and Lyra burst from the shadows, the king's smile was serene. "My wayward son returns." His voice was soft, almost loving. "You killed my sister," Kael roared. "She gave herself," the king replied. "And so will you." The crystals shivered as if breathing. Lyra's power surged uncontrollably, gold light tearing through the marble floor. "He's not human anymore," she whispered. "He's become the god." As soldiers swarmed, Kael drew his blade, glowing with her light. They fought side by side, flame and shadow intertwined, until Corin appeared once more, driving a knife into Taryn's back. The old mage's final words echoed, "End the circle, before it ends you." The room exploded in light as the throne cracked, and a voice older than time hissed through the smoke. Free at last. The palace burned from within, fire curling up its towers like serpents of light. Kael and Lyra stumbled through collapsing halls, the heat searing their lungs. "We can't stop it!" Kael shouted. Lyra turned, eyes shining with something beyond mortal fire. "Yes, we can. Together." She reached for his hand, and when their fingers touched, the world bent. A blinding surge burst from their joined wrists, the mark of the pact igniting. The flames recoiled, forming a circle around them. Kael felt the god's voice inside his mind, seductive and cruel. "Give her to me, and you'll have peace." He gritted his teeth. "No." Lyra heard it too. Tears cut through the soot on her cheeks. "If you break the bond, you'll die." He smiled, the faintest trace of peace in his eyes. "Then let me die free." The firestorm swallowed them whole, and for a heartbeat, all of Valinor saw 2 silhouettes embracing in the inferno. The gods screamed and shattered. When the smoke cleared, only Lyra remained, her hands glowing faintly as she knelt beside Kael's still body. She pressed her forehead to his, whispering, "You were never my enemy." Outside, dawn broke, and the city, for the first time in centuries, breathed. Smoke blanketed the ruins of Valinor like a second dawn. The air shimmered with dying embers, the color of blood and gold. Lyra staggered through the wreckage, her lungs burning, her body barely holding the weight of what she'd lost. Kael's blade lay half-buried in ash beside her, its hilt still warm from his hand. She reached for it with trembling fingers, tracing the familiar runes as if they could still pulse with his heartbeat. Don't fade yet, she thought. Not when I can still feel you. The city around her was unrecognizable. Towers melted into molten glass, streets reduced to rivers of dust. But through the devastation, something stirred. People emerging from hiding, faces streaked with soot and disbelief. They looked to Lyra as though she were some remnant of salvation, but she felt hollow, the ache of the bond like a missing limb. Every step she took echoed Cale's last words, "Then let me die free." They were freedom's anthem and her heart's undoing. That night, she collapsed beneath the shattered statue of the old gods. Her magic sparked weakly, flickering like a candle struggling against the wind. "You can't leave me," she whispered to the shadows. The air thickened, and for a fleeting second, she swore she heard his voice. "I never left." The whisper wasn't a memory. It was something alive, threading through her soul. The pact had not died. It was merely waiting. Days turned into nights, and Lyra wandered through the city's bones, gathering survivors and whispering courage into their wounds. Each soul she touched reignited a faint light, but her own flame dimmed in return. She began seeing him in flashes, a figure standing beside her reflection, a hand brushing her shoulder where no one stood. "You're haunting me," she muttered one dawn. The wind replied, "Or guiding you." The voice was Cale's, softer now, threaded with something beyond human. When she entered the throne room again, it was empty, but not silent. The shattered crystals that once held trapped souls pulsed faintly, their glow answering her touch. Within them, whispers intertwined, fragments of the lost Sombrette, freed, yet unfinished. "You freed them," said a voice behind her. She turned. It was Terran, somehow alive, his robes scorched but his eyes bright. "The circle isn't over," he warned. "The god still lingers. The pact chose you to finish what began." Lyra felt the mark on her wrist ignite, the pain sharp and luminous. "And what if I can't?" she whispered. "What if I'm not enough?" Terran smiled with quiet sorrow. "You carry his fire. You carry her light. Together, you are the balance. Alone, you must become both." The words carved themselves into her bones. The echoes of Cale's spirit brushed against her heart. For the first time she understood. Love hadn't ended the curse. It had rewritten it. Guided by dreams and ghosts, Lyra traveled to the ancient caverns beneath the kingdom, the birthplace of both magic and war. The tunnels hummed with energy, each stone vibrating with trapped memory. Flames flickered within the walls, forming shapes that looked like faces, ancestors watching, judging, remembering. Lyra pressed her hand to the rock and felt Cale's heartbeat echo through the stone. "I'm still here," his voice murmured through the fire. "But the god is stirring again." At the mountain's core lay a chamber of molten light, where time itself seemed to bend. A massive seal, etched with runes of binding, pulsed with cracks of red and gold. Terran's words echoed in her head. "You carry his fire." Lyra knelt, her reflection warping in the liquid glow. To end this, she realized, I must let go of him. But the thought alone felt like tearing her soul in half. The bond that had once saved her now tethered her to the past. Her tears hissed as they fell into the lava, becoming steam that shimmered into visions. Cale standing before her, reaching out. "You can't keep me," he said gently, "but you can finish what we started." She reached for him, their fingers brushing through flame, and felt something break inside her. Not in pain, but release. The mark on her wrist flared once more, and the entire mountain answered. The seal split open with a thunderous roar, the god's voice rising from the depths, a storm of rage and sorrow. "You would defy eternity, child of light?" it thundered. Lyra stood trembling but unbroken, her hair whipping in the heat. "I would redefine it," she said. Golden fire surged from her palms, not as destruction, but as creation, her power bending the inferno into patterns of light. For the first time, the flames did not burn. They healed. They remembered. The god's form materialized, vast and shimmering, neither man nor beast, but something older than language. "He offered himself to bind me," it hissed. "Would you do the same?" Lyra raised her chin, tears cutting clean lines through the soot. "He didn't die for you," she said. "He lived for me." The god roared, but her voice rose above the storm. "And I will live for both of us." Her magic exploded outward, wrapping around the god like ribbons of light. Every memory of Kale poured through her, every moment of doubt, every stolen heartbeat, until the god's flames dimmed to embers. When the light cleared, the mountain was silent again, the seal reforged. Lyra collapsed, the mark on her wrist fading to silver. It's done, she thought. But in the stillness, a whisper brushed her mind one last time. You are my fire now. She smiled weakly. Then burn bright, wherever you are. Weeks passed, and from the ashes of the old empire rose something fragile and new. The people rebuilt their homes, not with fear, but with faith. Faith in the magic that once damned them. Lyra walked among them, the light in her hands now steady, her smile quiet, but sure. Where once there was fire, now there were gardens. Where once there was blood, now there was song. The kingdom was healing, and so was she. Every evening, she climbed to the mountain's edge to watch the sunset. The horizon burned gold, and in that glow, she sometimes saw him, a figure standing where the sky met flame. She never called out. She didn't need to. The bond had changed, not ended. It was no longer chain or curse. It was promise. You were my beginning, she whispered into the wind, and I'll make sure your ending means something. As night fell, she lit a single lantern and set it afloat into the dark. It drifted upward, joining 1,000 others, filling the heavens with gentle fire. The stars themselves seemed to echo back his voice. The light never dies. Lyra closed her eyes, a tear catching the glow. No, she breathed. It just learns to live again.